everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Another Monday night. Three of us are back in action over here. Some of us with better Wi-Fi than others, but I am your host, Timucin, as always, here in Chicago. Beautiful weather outside. Actually, wife was kind of looking forward to hanging out on the outside. Then remembered I have to hang out with you bozos for like an hour over here. But obviously, it has been kind of like a difficult last 3-4 days over here. So I don't think we're going to be doing a lot of Premier League soccer transfer talk today. I don't think anybody is ready for that, but we'll see where the conversation goes along with people in the audience over here. But Gally is with us. Gally, what's happening?
I'm hanging in there, my man. A long weekend spent with my family. Kelly and I traveled to visit with her parents, and it was a long couple days. A lot of riding in the car, a lot of talking with my wife, realizing what things are really important in life. Makes me realize two things. One, how many people pay attention to the things that are important to me, for how many people reached out to me to see how things were going, or how many people told me I was the first person they thought of when they heard this random news. And they were like, isn't that the side? Like, isn't that the team that Gally loves so much? You know, those are those fringe. They're good friends, but they're the people on the fringe of this soccer world. And then it also made me realize what a great worldwide community I'm a part of. What a great, you know, Discord and local community, as well as the people locally that have become friends and family that I watch these football matches with week in and week out, just to see how many people rally during moments like this. So it was an eye-opening experience, all from a place of negativity that came back to like a place of love, which is kind of weird. Like it's that full circle emotional.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like, I was talking about this morning too. I felt like, I learned a lot, which is kind of like odd to say as old as I am, but you kind of learn a lot of things. And that's a good point, actually, the fact that the community is kind of like worldwide, because just thinking of some of the people that hopped on Discord after we posted and kind of like took a few days away. Obviously, we didn't have anything since Thursday. We started this morning. Nobody really wanted to, like, we had a lot of like inner discussions in terms of, do we go on air, do we not, what do we do, and stuff like that. And I'm glad we reached what we reached, which was like not doing anything. We kind of wanted to connect with people because we felt that was important. So we threw that Discord invite out there for those people to come in so we can still chat with them and kind of like bounce things back and forth and stuff like that. And yeah, that is an international community, all the way from like Kevin in New Zealand to people in Liverpool, Ireland, all over the place. And Bickler is here, barely connecting to the entire world via internet.
Yeah, so if I hop in and out, it'll be because I don't have a working internet connection. So I'm just working off, signals and radio towers. So, yeah, that happened on my first call of the day. Happy Monday. Heard a loud banging on the side of the house, went outside and saw a live fiber optic wire cut in half lying on the sidewalk. So, yeah, AT&T was nice enough to make a priority ticket. But can't be here for 2 days. So hopefully nobody on my street touches it and gets electrocuted. But yeah, I'm here.
I feel bad for the tickets that are not priority, by the way. So they'll probably have internet in like 2026 at this rate if the priority is 2 days. But yeah, it's kind of like odd to everything connects to that. But obviously we're going to talk about it a lot. I know, like, we'll start with you, Gally, because you were talking about it, that was like kind of my experience. And honestly, Thursday was the first day I slept in a long time. Well, I don't even know why, but I got up at 9:30. Normally I'm up around like 7, 8 or whatever automatically, even without an alarm. And when I woke up, I mean, similar to what you're talking about, I had like a bazillion messages. And my personal experience was kind of weird because there are some like Turkish Liverpool fans I've connected to, whether they're in the US, they're back home. Similar to you, people know I'm a Liverpool fan, so they see something, they message. And there was a lot of like condolences kind of stuff coming through in Turkish. And in my groggy state, as I was reading those, I honestly was really, really worried that it was my brother initially. So that's kind of like a punch in the face, because I was like, holy shit, what happens? And then you kind of like read the other stuff, and we live in a world. I actually remember, like when Kobe passed away, Shaq was talking about this, that his son shows him the news. And he says, man, get that out of here, because you can't believe anything you see on the internet these days, kind of thing. But as you see all the messages and confirmations and stuff. They're kind of like, I mean, I told Angie, and he was just like, "What?" Because it's something that is like very difficult to believe, Gally. Like you would think, and it's like a horrible spoof if anybody had done it. But still, you almost maybe don't want to believe it, so you kind of like hope that it's not true, and it's just like a stupid, like unnecessary joke or something like that.
Yeah, it was July 3rd, and I knew that the traffic would be terrible if I tried to drive into work and then try to get out of the city with everyone going to Cape Cod and all that crap. So I knew I was working from home on Thursday, and I wake up 4:30, 5 a.m. Eastern, just about every day now, whether I want to or not, just because that's what I do. And I created that schedule. So now Smokey's like, hey, somebody feed me, even when it's not a work day. He's like, 5 a.m. effers, get up. So I got up like always. I kind of mill in bed. I usually grab my phone. I hate to say it. I go on Twitter. I see like who's getting transferred to who's buying what rumors out there today. Like it's just kind of my like way to open up my day. And I was laying in bed. I think I was petting the dog. Kelly was sleeping, and I got a FOTMob notification. And you can only read like a little bit until you like open the whole thing. And it said breaking Liverpool news, Diogo Jota. And that's all I could see without opening it. And I thought to myself, wow, that came out of nowhere. They sold Jota. Jota's asking for a transfer. He's informed the club he's looking for a new challenge. And I clicked the button and my whole mind went. And I just remember this like pit, like almost to your point, like disbelief. But I'm like, this isn't some journalist on Twitter. This isn't some aggregator, I'm trying to read in Spanish. I just looked at this and I realized, holy effing shit, this is real. And then when I clicked on it and I realized it was a reputable article with news reporting, I I think I might have teared up or I started to like shake a little bit, and my mind was going in 100 different areas. And Kelly woke up and was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And she's half asleep. And I said, "What happened?" And she's like, "You're dreaming. You're making this up. Like, just go back to sleep. Like, calm down." And then when like she realized I wasn't kidding, and like it basically from that moment, like I knew I should go do a post. I knew we needed to talk about what to do. I literally, I'm not even kidding, and this is Gally of all people saying this, like lost for words doesn't even start. I couldn't formulate a sentence. I tried typing an email to someone at work. I couldn't get through. So it just I guess that was my initial, and it was just like I know this is what everyone's feeling all over the world. I hadn't even gotten to process the family, the kids. At that point, it was 5:30 in the morning in Springfield, Massachusetts. I was still selfishly thinking about me and how it impacted me, and
Yeah.
the full picture didn't set in yet. And it took a couple hours, to be honest, before I genuinely felt like I was in a catatonic state. Like I couldn't process anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I feel like when something like this happens, Bickler, I mean, we're talking about it like on Discord, obviously, and I know like Sir Z mentioned like his wife's reaction was, you know, poor mom, like poor mother, because like they lost two sons. Angie's first reaction, especially once she found out that he was recently married, because it was in the news article and stuff like that, was like the poor wife and stuff. I mean, we connect on a different note, as a dad, and like I've lost my dad, so I'm kind of like thinking of all those different angles. One way or the other, it's a hard hit, Bickler, even outside of the sport, like leave alone being like a Liverpool fan when you see something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I talked about it, but I think, if you followed and listened to us for a long time, my struggles with depression and anxiety and the stuff I was diagnosed with back in 2016. In 2018, I lost my marriage, my best friend, the ability to see my kids every day, and a job in the span of 3 months. And I really was at a point in my life where I just genuinely didn't want to get up in the morning and didn't feel like I had a reason to. And I've followed Liverpool, since the early 2000s. And Liverpool became my reason to get up in the morning. And I think in a lot of ways, until things sort of resolved themselves, and I essentially determined that, like, my reason for getting up in the morning, Liverpool helped me see that I needed to continue to go through this and not give up, and not essentially fold it in and give up, because my kids needed to have a dad, like, in some capacity. And I didn't want the lesson for my kids to be that their dad gave up because they weren't important enough to him. So Liverpool, in a lot of ways, saved my life. So once I had a moment at lunchtime on the day I found out, like, I think grief really hit me, like, super, super hard. Like, in a way, I'd kind of been numb up until I started, like, took a break, looked at my phone, saw Robbo's post and a bunch of the player messages coming in. And it really just sort of hit me in this grief in totality, just like so heavy and so just literally sick to my stomach for his family, knowing his kids are going to grow up not knowing what an amazing guy and man he was to his family, and all of those things and all the things you talk and think about. But when this is all said and done, like, and I looked at, like, how can a stranger from Portugal, 3,000-4,000 miles away, hit you like that? And it's because, like, to us, this means more than just following a hobby. It's these people become our extended family through extended passion, through this sort of hobby and passion project of ours. They become an extension of our family. So to me, it genuinely felt like losing family.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it does become, because I mean, we live and breathe these guys. We've mentioned it before. Probably spend more on Liverpool sometimes than we do with our better halves and stuff like that on, like, certain days with match days and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, look, like I say, initial shock was like I was afraid it was my brother when I see the messages. So that's a punch in the face. Then I realized it's Jota, and there's like that shock. But I think, like, to me, it has just been confirmed that I was not as crabby and grumpy as I thought I was. Angie said you weren't that grumpy, by the way, because I was talking about it this morning to Matush. So I got to raise my level up a notch over here to my grumpiness. But, like, I felt like the first 2 days I was just, to me, it hits like multiple ways. I mean, obviously, Gally, like, we know these players. We don't know these players, but we know these players, if that makes sense. It'll only make sense to people like us, probably more than anything else. But, I mean, his age, you look at the scenario, probably the summer of his life, literally winning a title, winning the Nations Cup with the national team, getting married. Like, he's like literally like the peak. If you were looking at your life, it could possibly be the peak in your, like, happiest times kind of a deal. The fact that happens, and then or automatically, whenever there's a death, maybe it's like a selfish thing, but you kind of reflect it on yourself. I kind of, like, anytime that happens, like, the biggest loss I've had is, like, my dad, so my thoughts automatically go to that. And then I also, as a dad, now I've noticed that it hits me harder than before when I was, like, a single dude, because now you understand the responsibility of being a dad, so you see it as a dad and as a son, like his little kids and stuff. So all those combined, the whole family and everything like that, it just made it the first, especially day and 2 days, like, really, really difficult. I never thought I would be this impacted, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, I come from a little different place than both of you. Knowing the two of you the way that I have, you're both fathers. I'm not. Um, I'm lucky enough to have both of my parents still alive and together, and I know that's not the case for both of you, and those things make things different, and we all internalize. And I don't think that and that's not saying that if you're not a parent, you're not hurting right now. I'm not saying it's any different, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm an emotional basket case of a human being and expect to probably need those tissues, especially if Paul keeps sharing heartfelt stories like that. And I appreciate you for doing it, and I knew you would. But it's a similar thing happened to me, Timucin. I was thinking today, like, when you do a show like this, how do you talk about someone you don't really know and how their loss or how this loss impacts you, right? And I really wanted to be able to like put these hard thoughts together. So I started to think to myself, like, how else do you do it? I think you do it the way you guys have so far. You share mutual stories that at least allow you to put yourself in that person's shoes, whether it be as a father or as, a parent who's
Yeah.
lost their children. And like, I think about what you just said about like his summer, right? Like, and some people that have listened to this podcast know, anyone who came to the petting zoo in Chicago knows I have an amazing better half that I'm very, very lucky to be with. And God, I thank her every single day for putting up with this craziness right here. But this is my second marriage, and I had a really great relationship with my first wife, Kate, and we were really, really close. And I had to put myself back in that moment when I got married, and it made me realize I was 28 years old with my whole life ahead of me when I got married the first time. And that wedding was everything that those pictures and the videos and everything shared. It was big family, it was the whole party, it was the getting ready photos. And the second marriage was we paid for it, so basically it lasted exactly as many minutes as I could to make sure people got to eat and get the hell out and still give us a gift. But I look back at the way I felt, like that month, those weeks leading up to it, the excitement, and I didn't have a life already built with that person. I was preparing to build that life. And I guess I look back at it and I think about how my brain didn't focus on 2006 September at all of getting married. My brain went to where the next 20, 30 years were going. We were going to have children. We planned to grow old together. And these are the stories and the quotes that you're learning. And I guess the reason I bring that up is I think we can all find a way, whether we've lost someone profound in our life this way or had a tragic death. I think at the end of the day, what you really have to do is just put yourself in the situation of a person who knew love. And if you've ever loved anyone and know what it's like to be loved, I think you understand what was taken from those people
Yeah.
Thursday morning. And then I guess that's where I had to go. Like, and it's funny when I had this conversation with Kelly, she's like, "This is when I'm proud to be your wife." Not when you make funny jokes about, being your second marriage and, waiting for your third or anything like that. Like, genuinely, this is the time when I recognize like how much I've grown as an individual with the way that I'm looking at these things. And I know it's going to be hard, but I genuinely believe these are all young men. That entire side are a bunch of young men, some of whom will go through losing someone for the first time. Like, this is going to be a monumental moment that helped so many people, so many more people. No one's going to say this was a good thing ever. But I think in the long run, this will be looked back at like most tragedies that are handled well. And I think a lot of people will learn from this, will grow from this. And for me, in these tragic times, the only thing you can do is find silver linings, as slight as they might be.
I never thought of that actually. That's a good point. I mean, because we were just talking about this about like when we were talking about Jasmine with like Angie the other day, where like when Angie's grandmother passed away, so it was like what the great grandma, I guess. I mean, Jazz especially took it. They both Jazz and Layla, but they took it really hard, and I was like, didn't really connect because like I say, when my grandma died, it's different, and maybe as you get older you get a bit more at certain levels that you kind of sadly get used to the losing. I mean, I've already lost like high school buddies, college buddies, and stuff like that. And but that was the first person that she has actually lost. And some of these players, I mean, that's a good point that you make, that are heck younger than Jazz. So it has to be a challenge. So it could be a scenario where, yeah, this is the first time not only they lost somebody in their lives, but like somebody like really close and did not expect. I think it's always different, and I don't want to make it like it's not important, but when somebody like extremely old dies, it's almost like you can kind of prepare yourself for a couple of decades or whatever. You know what I mean? The mortality is going to come. But when something like this happens, when somebody right next to you that you would never think of, that it has to hit them hard, and it's probably tricky. But I mean, I do want to get to that in terms of like how we will, we think it will affect the team and the rest of the season and stuff like that. But Victor, I mean, the biggest thing that, we were talking about like what we learned over the last 4 days, and like similar to like Gally, I'm lucky with Angie. Obviously, like she's a sports girl. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to. We wouldn't probably be able to coexist anyway. But she's a sports girl, like Liverpool. I mean, nobody can follow that as close as we do, but she follows it, knows all the players and all that kind of stuff. So she would be somebody actually who gets it. But I don't want to constantly pass my sorrow around the house over here. So I think that's when like kind of Discord came in. Part of me initially wanted to go on air, but I'm glad we kind of like talked about it. Instead of going on air and talking to those people almost came to us in Discord, Bickler. And it was a great way to kind of, it's almost like talk to each other and like slowly take the grief away from each other, even though we have it as well. It's kind of like a weird deal. And what I thought about it afterwards, like I think it was like Saturday evening or whatever, it like hits me. I was like, I don't know where I would go for that 6-7 years ago. Like there wouldn't be a channel for me to kind of go and talk to. I don't know what we have there, like 100 or whatever. There are probably like 50-60 active people on there on that Discord channel. So it was great to at least have our community to kind of, I mean, you always joked, well, I mean, maybe partially true that this was therapy for you when we used to do the Monday night podcast over these years. And I thought it was like kind of like therapy for everybody in there in a weird kind of way.
Yeah, I think it was. I'll tell you what it reminded me of. So I've, obviously been no stranger to loss in general. My travel team in high school was very, very lucky and fortunate enough to be a part of a really, really good soccer program in the state of Michigan. And we traveled all over the country with this team. We lost 2 players before we graduated high school. One was to a brain aneurysm. And his dad was a doctor who cleared him. And the other one was to suicide. And that, like, I have relationships with that group of guys that I will have for the rest of my life. And we don't always see each other. And we'll go years without seeing each other. But I remember when we went through those times, and I remember having 2.5-hour practices and staying another, having these long practices and then staying another 2.5 hours and just talking about, memories of these guys and just really, having conversations about everything, our parents, our girlfriends, and just stuff that's not probably normal to share with kids that age at that level. And that's kind of what Discord reminded me of. It reminded me of a lot of people that were grieving together in a society where everything is a grift designed to divide people and capitalize and monetize that. I think grief is the ultimate shared experience that brings people together in a very uniquely symmetrical way that not a lot of life experiences do, if that makes sense. So I thought it was very, very cool to see. I'm glad that we were able to have that platform, and we'll continue obviously to grow it. So for all the people that aren't there, please join us. For all the people that did come in, it really meant a lot to me to see the new people come in.
Yeah, that was definitely nice to see. And that's the thing I was really looking for. It's just almost like wanted to get on air and to be able to, I didn't want to get on air, let's put it this way, but I wanted to be able to have those conversations with like our regulars and stuff like that, people we talk to every morning and stuff like that. And this was like the perfect way to do it on Discord. I just posted the link for the invite to the fan channel on YouTube and Facebook. So if you are watching us live, and I'll put it in the Spotify too, if you are like listening to us as a podcast, and really putting up with our voices. Well, I guess it's better than putting up with our visuals too. So it's a bonus there. But yeah, I think that's a good point.
Definitely Paul's visual and today, because it would throw you off because you're trying to figure out, is he the greatest ventriloquist ever to roll up out of Wilmington, or is he working off a hotspot? I just have the real question, and I'm not trying to be flippant, but I questioned it. I thought to myself, can I get the video surveillance of Bickler on the roof with shears taking that wire down, saying to himself, I don't know if I can do this show today, and then just trying to cut the cord, and then Timucin being like, just join on your phone. It'll all work out okay.
I actually envision Bickler misunderstanding the whole cut the cord concept and getting on the roof and cutting that freaking thing. But I mean, that's odd you say that, because it's okay. This is like very difficult, and I think people in Discord will probably understand this, and people like who are listening to us regularly, even if you're not on Discord, will probably understand this a lot better. But it's almost like we're in the similar mindset. We might not agree on who should start where and all that kind of stuff, but we're in a similar mindset, and it's like people who kind of get each other and get the scenario. I mean, okay, like this is like a really weird freaking story to share, but I'll share it anyway. I know, like my dad, like I say, my dad passed away. If you're like familiar with like the religion at all, I'm not very religious myself. I've said it over here multiple times, but you know, like when we went back to this happened in London, we went to Istanbul, so the funeral and stuff like that. After the funeral, and I know this is like every Muslim country, or it could be like a Turkish thing, I don't know, but there's a thing called Mevlüt where like people go to the mosque and like they read basically the Quran almost like in his name, I guess it would be, right? I don't know if there's anything like that over here at all, but like so anyway, we're doing that, and well, they're doing that. So we're in the mosque, and you know, like in the mosque, like the ladies are upstairs and like the men are downstairs, and like men, as in like it becomes only the close family. Then it's just not the people that showed up to the funeral, but it's only friends and family. And I remember, first of all, people upstairs were cracking up, like the ladies, because they're sharing stories about my dad and stuff like that. And we're downstairs, and I said something like really stupid that I probably shouldn't have said in the mosque anyway, but during the procedures, you know, like the nerves are all goofy. And we all like just started laughing uncontrollably. I literally had to walk out because I couldn't control myself. But everybody was like, but you know, like normally you would like if somebody walks in there and they're like, dude, these guys are cracking up and it's like dad's funeral. But I think you're surrounded by people who kind of get you, get the circumstances, understand exactly what's going on, and kind of like feel the grief, but at the same time, kind of like understand like where you're coming from, kind of a thing. That's the feeling I got, Gally, like when I was in Discord. It was a lot of people who kind of get each other in a weird kind of way.
Yeah, I completely agree. I appreciated it all weekend long. I appreciated everyone who joined. I appreciated the waves of emotions. I mean, the morning started with one person rightfully kind of saying, like, do we do an emergency show? I'm gutted here. I want to talk. And like 2 hours later, the same person is like, had me a think on this, read all these comments. Getting on air right now would be the absolute worst thing we could do. I agree we should not be doing this. And I think I made the comment this morning, like, no one person rode the charge for we should do posts or we should do comments or we should go silent. It was genuinely a conversation of people sharing the pros and cons. And it was like we went on a journey together. And as a group, we got to the end that I think every single one of us was not only proud of the decision we made, but maybe more importantly, how we got there. And I think Sir Z said it earlier, you know, Discord's a battlefield, even when we're winning. This is a place where people tell each other they love each other one day and then call each other shite and, you know, swear at each other and call each other dumbasses and be like, well, if you think that, then, you know, he's a right back. And you're like, I'm going to strangle you through this. But what you realize is that's how you treat, to Paul's point, teammates, brothers, friends, family, like, and that's what that community has become for me. And then you made the comment, I don't know where I would have went. I don't know where I would have went or who I would have leaned on. for those minutes, to what you talked about and Partho talked about. Like, Kelly loves Liverpool. She comes on the trips. Hell, she likes and subscribes to every single thing we do before any of us do. But like, she can't talk about this for 24 hours a day, and it can't consume her because it's not her passion. It's my passion that she loves being a part of. And I just want to say this about the whole thing. And maybe this kind of takes us into where it went. What I'm most proud of as a Liverpool supporter in all of this is that it's been very, very little remembering Diogo Jota, the footballer. And it's all been really about memorializing the man, the person, the brother. I genuinely feel that is a sign not only of the community, but also the way that we're like sheltered from these players. We joke like we know them. We feel like we know them. But unfortunately, it took this man dying for me to truly know and learn the story of him and some of the things that make him tick and what he stands for and all the things that he's done. And I guess I'm doing it in a two-part. One, I'm saying it because I'm proud of myself that I got to learn this and I saw this and that I am, in my mind, thinking of, Diogo Jota, and I wish I knew all 11 names he had. But, like, I wish I knew him as the person before this happened. But I'm also trying to remind myself the next time I want to call a player a rat or I want to hammer on somebody for, a bad pass or for being shite when they're not scoring a goal because they offer very little else to the team. Like, I just wanted to, like, I think you're going to have to internalize and remember, like, what it felt like in this moment. And I'm not saying we're bad people for having sports conversations around a sports team, but I think too often we make them people when we want them to be people, and then we make them commodities when we want to make an argument. And I hope that out of this, I'll learn that I need to learn more about who they are as men and women and people than just pro athletes. But more importantly, when I start to think and trade them as a commodity, to remind myself that they are still people and brothers and uncles and fathers and husbands, because I just don't feel like that's thought about enough.
I think it's difficult to kind of like sometimes separate the player from like the person they are. I mean, it's one thing to have like a misplaced pass or something like that you criticize, but I think like, when we kind of wish ill on them and stuff like that like over the top reactions that some people, I mean, we've seen it occasionally and we pretty much like harped on it right away when somebody had it on Discord and stuff. But it's I think it's important to be able to kind of like separate that, because ultimately, and I guess that kind of brings me to the next thing over here, Bigfoot, is the fact that these guys are all like, ultimately, like, I mean, kids. I would consider them kids because I'm freaking up there in age. I mean, I would, they're like my kids' ages. So there you go. So it's important, like, to see like how they will deal with it. I think in some ways, I think having these guys together is going to be more important. I mean, we were talking about it with Mateusz this morning. Sometimes there's like, like strength in numbers, and it's a lot easier to kind of like what we did on Discord. It might be easier to go through it in the place that they feel most comfortable in, which is, practicing together, playing together, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I obviously never experienced it at this level, but when I went through this as a kid, it was 100% where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be home. I didn't want to be in school. I wanted to be, with my mates on the soccer pitch, out on the pitch, with the routine and the rigor and the everything that goes into that. I think if there's anything that you could say about the side, is if you wanted to pull a squad together and have them play for something bigger than themselves, nothing could possibly do that than losing a teammate of this caliber. And I don't talk about that from a footballing standpoint. I talk about it from everything else that Jota was. By all accounts, Jota was the guy that you wanted to see first thing when you went into the dressing room. And he's the guy that you wanted there at the end when you had questions or needed help. And so in a lot of ways, I think he was the ultimate teammate. I think that grief is a unifier. And I think that for this side, being together is probably exactly what they need. I think in the long run, I think, will this ever be considered something, quote, good? No. But could this be something that puts this side in another stratosphere in terms of the way they play and how they play for each other? Absolutely.
When something like this happens, like everybody, we were talking about it, we all deal with it differently, right? Like in terms of like the grief part, everybody, like somebody wants to just go chat, do this, somebody wants to be quiet, left alone, and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to vary from player to player. But I know, common sense says the logical thing is to go back where you feel at home, where you feel comfortable. I was talking about it this morning, like, when that happened to me, I was like a college student, I was a sophomore in college. I definitely didn't want to go to class, but I wanted to get back. Like, I wanted to be with the people that I felt the most comfortable with, like my team and stuff. And I just wanted to play. I just wanted to practice. I wanted to kick somebody, wanted to kick the ball or whatever. Just do stuff that is natural, that takes you away from like thinking about everything else. So I know, Gally, like it will be different for each player. Like how Mo handles it will be different than how Bradley handles it, for example. But at the end of the day, in most cases, common sense would say that's where they feel home when they're together.
It absolutely does. And this is, I don't even know if I want to say it out loud because it's probably going to be terrible, but it could be considered as insensitive. It could be considered as crass. There's chat happening right now, and we appreciate all the people chatting, and we love that you chat amongst each other. And on a night like tonight, it's not the easiest to bring up comments because it's harder to address them. But everybody worries about how it impacts and what the next steps are. But truthfully, every one of these players will deal with this differently. You made the comment, Timucin, but the one common thread in all of this is that whether they want it to or not, the world goes on. And I don't mean that as crass, but like when your father passed away, Timucin, you had no choice but to continue living your life. You could have gone and had terrible things happen. You could have went down alcohol or drugs or depression, right? Like Paul mentions the young kids he played footy with and like them wanting to get together, and there could have been negative fallout from that. And maybe there was, and hopefully those people use that to build themselves up. But like when these things happen and you do it as an adult and you do it with a collective group of people, you're worrying about the growth of everyone in that room. And I think that the room themselves, to Paul's point, maybe it kicks them on, maybe they lead forward with it. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be a ton of firsts. The first time they go to lunch, the first time they have, a team bonding exercise, that everybody thinks, oh, when they get on the pitch is the easiest. This is what they do. They're the 1% to be that good. It's all the other things he brought. And, when I realized, like I mentioned earlier, the man that they're describing and all these heartfelt tributes, like we've joked on this podcast about how Simicast has a job because Mo needed a friend. They kept loving around for an extra year, right? We've talked about how Matip was this goofball and how the center backs had this like Matip, Virgil, and Joe Gomez are like Joe Gomez and Virgil aren't friends. They are boys. Yeah. Like they would hang out if Gomez left and they'd hang out on the daily. It's like the old Messi, Neymar, and Suarez group chat that went on years after none of them played for Barcelona and weren't on the same team. You find people at clubs. What I genuinely love about this is that we never knew who Diogo Jota's mate was. who his best buddy was, which clique he rolled with. Because I think he was everybody's friend. And it's like Jurgen said, Diogo Jota never wanted to be popular. Because if you're loved by everyone, you don't have to be popular. You just are. And I know Robertson making those comments, calling him Mick Jota, that he was like an Irishman from Wales or something, because he wanted to go to horse races and like hang out with Kelleher and him. And like he was just one of the guys. I feel like I do believe that this is going to be something that eventually they drive strength from, and that we think they're just a collection of great guys that do special things. And I genuinely think there's a world where they start to do things at a level that we don't even understand, because existentially players like Mo Salah now understand this is actually bigger than my contract. This is bigger than my last 2 years at this club. And I genuinely think we're about to embark in something very, very hard, very emotional. And at the end, could be absolutely special.
And I think, like, honestly, like, more than guys like Mo and stuff, I feel like this is like, these are the kind of things that make you mature a lot faster. There's getting older and there's maturing, and things like this is like really what ends up, like, making you mature. And I think if you're as a group, I mean, going back to what you were saying, yeah, the pitch is probably the easiest part, right? Because that's more like me killing people on Call of Duty, or kicking, like a 12-year-old's ass on FIFA or whatever. Like, it kind of like distracts you. It's your thing. You're not thinking of anything else. But I think if you are, when the FIFA ratings come out this year and they're going around shooting that video and stuff like that, they're all going to think of Jota, because that was his game and that was his thing. But I think, Bickler, when you're doing it as a group, it's a lot easier to, it almost becomes, if he was here, he'd say this right now. And it's more like remembering as opposed to being solo. Then you're kind of like more, you miss more, as opposed to if you're with other people, you more talk about, if he was here right now, he would say this, and you laugh, and you like, somebody shares the memory of him kicking their ass kicked on FIFA by him, like Bradley did and stuff like that. And it kind of like takes a different tone. That's why I feel like, I'm sure, like, I was reading most comments about like dreading going back to Liverpool, but in some ways, I think probably like the best way, the only way these guys are going to probably heal faster is when they get back together, which is soon, obviously. But I think it's a different atmosphere when you're with others sharing the same story.
Yeah, I mean, I think death and grief is such a deeply personal experience to navigate, but I definitely think the path to healing is much more direct and quicker when it's a shared experience, right? And I think so in a lot of ways that it's almost vital that these guys are together. I think, we talk about first, I can't imagine going in that locker room. I can't imagine walking in that locker room and having that empty locker and having to process that as a teammate. But I think ultimately, from a shared experience standpoint, I think the sort of common thread from them, I think is almost crucial to them being able to process this as young men and become more mature, and to become ultimately a closer unit. And I think Partha made a comment earlier in the thread that I found really, I actually had this thought the other day. As much as I love Arne Slot and I loved his comment in his sort of testimony to the passing of Diogo Jota, I think Klopp did so much to pull this community together that there is a part of me that misses Klopp as the manager for this moment, because I think that this moment really needs to feel communal amongst the supporters and amongst this team. And I think nobody did that better than Jurgen. So I just wanted to kind of hat tip to that comment, because I felt that at many levels throughout the last week talking about this. But I ultimately think that the fact that this team has been already so embedded and that you're going to sort of establish that a decade ago, I think is only going to really help this team moving forward.
I think, it's the thing that's odd is I understand that Klopp comments, and I partially agree, but in some ways I can't help but think, going back to what we're saying, maybe somebody keeps it more business-like and pointed-like as opposed to injecting more emotion. I think that depends on the individual, right? Some people might want that, some people might not. And I think, Gally, I was sharing the story this morning, and like all of us, I'm sure we've shared a lot of stories tonight, by the way, but I kind of figured this is how it's going to go. But we all have, especially as we get older, the older guys in the audience will know, regardless of how old you are, there are certain moments, like if you made a timeline of your life, there's like certain events that you can kind of like pencil in there and you remember very, very, very vividly, whereas some other ones you don't. I mean, I remember this, I told the story this morning, but when I was a manager over here at the Menards in Bolingbrook, like we have about 200 people or something like that. This older gentleman who worked in the hardware department, really nice guy, Dave, and he went on break. We used to park like outside the parking lots, not to take away from customers, but and he passed away during his lunch break in his car. And like I remember like him, going out there, trying to, then the cops, ambulance and stuff. And I remember like people went back inside, and I sat outside for a while, just sat there, because like I say, whenever something like this happens, my thoughts go to my dad and stuff like that. And you always talk, think about your immortality. You're like, this can happen to anybody anytime. Like this guy was going out to lunch, and he was an elderly gentleman, but still he just thought he was going to go out to lunch and come right back in and stuff. But I remember after that, like once everything cleared, I sat there for another like 10-15 minutes, and I walked inside, and I remember going to my like desk area where the building materials desk is. It's kind of like the hub, like it's just like, and goes back to like Dara was saying, like it's life kind of a thing. And sadly, like you're saying, Gally, life goes on. And I walked in there, and it was like nothing happens. I don't know. Personally, I almost felt like, I don't know, like guilty in a way. I was like, shouldn't we just stop for at least a freaking little bit? Because we're going like nothing happened. This freaking happened over here. Like, shouldn't we stop for like a little bit? I remember like feeling that guilt. And, when we talk about not going on air, and let's face it, pretty soon over here, we're going to, sign somebody. We're going to talk transfers and stuff like that. Like that's guilt almost is going to be there, especially for me, Gally. I don't know why, but I feel like it will be there in the back of my head when we try to talk about who the left winger should be, right winger should be, and stuff like that, because I'm going to think of that, and I'm going to feel semi-guilty that we're already moved on in a way. We have to. It's life, but that part is always tricky.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the history, I think someone, and I apologize, I'm trying to read my pre-map prep notes, pre-show prep notes, which is don't read the comments.
Yes, I was going to say that's the only notes I pass out. Do not read the comments.
Yeah, don't read the comments, because we do no prep, people, because I don't want you to think like we are this bad with prep. Okay. But it's hard. And someone mentioned, I think it was Dom maybe mentioned that he was at Hillsborough, and I don't want to compare these events. That's not, and I don't think that's what Dom was doing, but there's a feeling around the pain, the loss, the club connection that it comes from. I don't know exactly how quickly after they started playing matches, but it wasn't long. And I know they then go on and they win the FA Cup final that year against Everton with the emotional final at Wembley. I can understand these thoughts. And I do agree with you. I heard you this morning tell that story, and it brought me back, when I was maybe 12 years ago or so, right when I got to my last job, the job that I loved, that I was at for 15 years, we lost one of the owners. Now, we knew it was coming, didn't make it any easier. And I just remember one day it was like we all got together and talked, and like the announcement came that he had actually passed. And it was like 2 hours of, crying and stories. And then literally someone was like, someone's got to go upload ACH files so everyone gets paid tomorrow, right? And we were like, oh, shit, we run a payroll company. And tomorrow we have to get up and do this again. And I just think that's where, when you realize as you get older, it's terrible to quote things from a movie, right? But like in that Any Given Sunday stupid thing at the end, the guy gives the big speech. And he says, like, in life, as you get older, you lose things. You only realize how much you lose when you're old enough to actually recognize what you had.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's what's happening at this moment to a lot of these players. I think they're growing. And I know people in the chat are asking some football related questions. And I don't know if we'll get to any football related answers tonight.
Probably not. Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, you guys mentioned something this morning on your show that I really thought was, I think it was Matus brought it up, about how people
If
are.
it was good, it was probably Matusha.
That's a great point. That's actually a fact. But he brought up that people are being vilified for how they're choosing to mourn. Who went? Why wasn't Jurgen at the funeral? Yeah. Where was Mo? Cristiano Ronaldo's a jerk because he didn't go. Yet he told everyone why he didn't go, and the media there proved it would have been the Ronaldo show if he went. I think it would have been the Trent show if he went. And I don't, and he's got a club that he's playing with right now in a tournament. And the players who did came because their team was eliminated so they could get back there. Like, I don't begrudge anyone for mourning. I just hope the same level of concern is shared with the players who have to make critical decisions this summer. Like, I've already seen people say players shouldn't be worried about their own transfers or worry about leaving the club this summer. Everyone should buckle down and stay to fight the cause and honor Diego and be here for him. And it's like, just like no one should be judged on how they mourn, I don't think anyone can be judged on how the next 2 to 3 months that might shape major decisions in their careers or their lives and their families. Like, I just feel like we have to give everyone an enormous amount of space. And I guess more than anything, it hunkers me back to our decision to give all of our followers and viewers space from our stuff to decide when was the right time. They can engage with our content when they're ready. And I feel like, I hope supporters recognize it wasn't right to question Jurgen, Trent, or Cristiano Ronaldo or Mo, just like it won't be right to question Richard Hughes, Michael Edwards from doing their job, or players who might think they need to angle for a move away from the club for the betterment of their career. Like, this is what happens when reality is thrust in your plate. And I think we have a chance to do great things here. I just really hope people will take this opportunity to look themselves in the mirror when they're making judgments about things they don't really have anything to be involved with.
Yeah, I said the same this morning, where I feel like some of those things are overblown in importance. You don't have to be there to show your respect, or you don't have to do certain things to, especially with the way the media is and stuff like that. Media was angry because they couldn't record it and all that kind of stuff more than anything else. But at the end of the day, Bickler, sadly, like they say, the show must go on. And so eventually things will go to, or I guess, when do you think, when somebody has to pull the trigger, right? And there was some like stuff happening today, but kind of like Gally was saying, we were about to record the Rival Bros with my brother for the Premier League show, where, he's the United guy, I'm like the Liverpool guy. And I was like, man, I'm not ready to talk anything Premier League, like to wrap my head around it yet. But when do you think, nobody cares when we will be, when the world will be, when like the Liverpool in terms of like the soccer world will be like, it is time to move on? I would think the first business is going to be announcing what they're exactly going to do. They said they would do certain things and announce it. But then when do you think that is, when they're like, well, we got to get back to what we can do?
I honestly am not sure. I'm not sure, and I don't know if there's a right answer to that. To be quite honest, in terms of like how you do this as a club, I'm not sure that there's a right answer. But I think that, like, I would think that mid-month business will start returning to usual for this club in terms of what they're doing and what they're making public and what they're not making public. But like I said, I don't know that there's a right answer, and I think no matter what they do, there are going to be people that have an issue with it.
When do you think that time is, Gally? Or, I don't think personally, I don't think I will judge it one way or the other, too soon, too late, or anything like that. Kind of like leave it in their good hands, kind of thing. I guess I'm asking more of like what your guess is in terms of when it will be.
So people may not like this. I think the people in the club offices are already doing the work they have to do, but they're doing it in a respectable manner to make sure that
Yeah.
there's not leaks and stories. And like they could be doing medicals and signing people and say, we're not announcing it till next week. Like literally, we're not going to do anything because we have to sort through all this stuff. They have to play a meaningful football game in 5 weeks. And what the result is on August 15th means nothing to Chris Gallivan on July 7th. I think we might have
Apparently not
lost
to
Nick.
Paul either. So
Paul clearly doesn't even care what Chris Gallivan has to say on July 7th. But I do think they have no choice but to do the job. They have 5 weeks. I mean, it's 6-7 weeks until they play. I can't imagine that they're not going to go on the European or on the Asian tour. So you have to get ready for an international tour. I don't want to talk about matches, but I think the work's still being done. It's just being done with the respect that is deserved to all those involved. And I think that's also respect to the players coming in. Like, would you want to be a player getting sold tomorrow and then having to answer questions? Would you want to be a player signing right now and answering questions? And maybe next Monday we can talk about how does this impact like these 3 new signings who have been waited all their lives for this dream move. And
I was going
they're
to ask that.
literally
Do you
walking into
guys
this.
think? Do you think? I don't know if we'll be able to get Bickler over here with this
Yeah.
disconnected wire, but do you think? I mean, especially with the recent news coming out. I mean, we're already forecasting probably another like 2-3 players coming in and stuff. Do you think in some ways is it better to get more fresh faces in there to kind of like, while the other guys are kind of like grieving together and like mending? Is it better to have these guys in some ways change the tone? It's a lot more difficult for them, right? Like it's a lot more difficult for like Frimpong to kind of like hop on and like make jokes and be himself and stuff like that, because people can take that as being like disrespectful. Hey, we got like, you know what I mean? Like it's trickier, I think, for those guys rather than the guys that are already there.
That's why I didn't mean to drop that conversation at 57 minutes, but that's why I almost said like maybe we talk about it next week or you guys can talk about it Wednesday on the show. But I do think it's going to be tricky, and I think that's where you need that veteran presence. You need the leadership team. The biggest thing for me, I guess I would say, the thing that I took out of this the most was that I said it earlier. Like I feel like I have a better understanding of Diogo Jota, the man, the father, the son, the brother. Like it killed me when like people were saying like he did an interview last year and was asked who his favorite Portugal football player was, and people were waiting for him to say Figo, Ronaldo, and he said Andre Silva. I'd pay money to watch him play any day of the week. Like he said that because it's his brother and he's that person. Like I feel like those types of stories, the story about him and all he's done for the women's game and never asked for any publicity. And he sat there and said, like, I want my daughter to grow up and know that Marta is a legitimate idol and not just Diego Jota. And it could be Serena Williams. And for that, and then he caught himself and he said, and for that matter, I want my sons to know it's okay for them to be their idols. It's okay for them to be their idols as well. Like he transcended the sport, and we're only learning it because of this tragedy. So I guess to me, this is like, I know we're wrapping up and Paul's trying to get back in, but this would be my rallying cry. I went to a network meeting on Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and had to talk to people that I really do care about. And when it came my like 60 seconds where you're supposed to like give some sales pitch and then tell people what you need from this referral group this week, I literally was like, I have nothing to say. I explained what happened that morning and what I just went through. And my exact response was like, the only ask I have for you is to call everyone in your life that you haven't talked to in a while that you care about and tell them how much you love them. I don't know this man, and I wish I could call him and tell him what a profound impact he had on my life, or at least what he had on me this morning. So, like, check on your friends. If you think someone needs help, ask them. If you wonder if they're doing okay, it's a good time to ask again. I'm dead serious. And yes, Jamie, it's our version of BNI. Jamie knows what I'm talking about. And that's it was real. And you know what is funny though? I was hovering over the likes and the cares in our quotes right now. And Michelle Lyman is a business owner who is in our BNI. And she was watching tonight because she knew how much this meant to me because I brought it up in that group. And that's a group of people who supported me through this. So reach out to all the people that you care about and make sure they know you care about them. Because to your point, Timucin, we don't know when things will end because those two brothers got in a car and they didn't think they weren't going to see their family or friends ever again. So, for anyone watching this, know that I do care about each and every one of you. I appreciate the community we've built. And I'm sorry for being on my soapbox there at the end. This was a really, really difficult thing for me. I didn't think I'd get through this whole episode without crying. And thank God Bickler left her. He probably would have said something profound and sad at the end of this. And
I was going to throw him at the end too. So God knows. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the lesson to be learned. I think Mateusz was talking about it this morning. Don't put that trip, go take the trip. Don't postpone that trip. I think that was like the biggest thing. I think you got to understand. I think it was somebody in the comments saying earlier that, this is like one Liverpool story out of like 10,000 other like deaths and stuff like that. But, you can't just go and look at the obituaries and say, take lessons from like random things. But when something like this happens, you have to have it where you gotta, in a positive kind of way, you gotta kind of reflect it and learn from it and do certain things better. And I think the best thing you can do is kind of like learn that, like, we've been talking all night, that it can be gone in a second. I was telling this morning as an old guy, stop planning long term. I worry as a lifestyle. I worry for everybody in this freaking chat over here. So you guys won't have to worry for long term stuff. Just live the moment. Some of that stuff that you worry about will never come across. And, like anything can be gone. So, talk to the people you need to talk to, mend your bridges and all that kind of stuff, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. We do have a sideways Bickler back, which is, better than, his vertical. Dude, I am an old guy. Maybe the camera makes you look 20 years younger. Yeah, that's what
that mustache actually looked better when it was perpendicular.
I was going to say it looks kind of like good. But Paul, as always, I'm going to throw it at you for final thoughts.
My final thought is I have no idea how Brian Shelton does this every single week. This has been absolutely miserable, not having proper internet. I don't know. I feel like I should.
Don't worry, nobody understands him either.
I don't know what the answer is. Yeah, I don't know what the answer here is, but yeah, I mean, listen, I think we obviously did this show. We knew it was going to be tough. I think selfishly, like, I knew that this show was going to be hard. Selfishly, I think we all wanted to do it together because we knew it would be a little bit therapeutic. So for anyone who joined us, listen to us at any point, thank you for joining this. I think, we talked about grief being deeply personal. I think the journey towards healing is one that has to be done together. So I think this is a seriously good moment for us to sort of join together and essentially sort of experience this together in a way that hopefully makes this a little bit more positive for us as we each kind of have our individual journey towards, like, healing over this.
Yeah, well said. See, we knew Bickler would, but you still didn't make Gally cry. That was the ultimate goal, but still partial credit for trying. But yeah, I do want to take the opportunity, though, to thank everybody who has kind of like helped put this community together. I mean, I would have never imagined, like, what has been like 7 years or something like that this is where we would be, and how grateful I am. And I mean, it's not only the bozos you get to see, but people who write are in that chat, people who do the stuff behind the scenes are in that chat, people who are on the shows are on that chat as well. So I think that's one thing that it showed me, one thing that I've learned, I was talking about like things I've learned over the last 3-4 days, is like we've kind of like built something like really, really cool. Kind of like proud to be part of it with you guys over here. We'll talk about, other stuff that we're going to do with the fundraiser and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure eventually we might even go back into talking soccer, football, and transfers and stuff like that. Who knows? But thanks to all those joining us tonight. Thanks to all those like listening. Do grab your friends. Like I say, there are people like us probably in your life. Grab them by the ear and drag them over here as well. Tony is 64 this year, so you're trying to make me feel young. So I do appreciate that. But have an excellent week, everybody, and we'll see you guys soon.